wear any makeup. I just figured it's geek night. I'm just here in my glasses and my sweatshirt. I'm going to share my whole screen. I'm going to share my computer sound just in case I want to share a video clip. Okay, so arranging 101. You can probably see my whole screen now. Can you see a cover page right now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so the things I wanted to talk about tonight are what you're going to need. What are the 11 chords? So lots of you said you're interested in chords and chord analysis, so we'll talk a bit about that. And I think you should be able to hear me on my keyboard if I need to. And then I want to talk about just sort of some ideas, and this is what's primarily in the handout, of how to start your first arrangement. Where do you begin? And then if we have time, we'll try it out. We usually don't end up having time, especially in a 1 hour, but we'll see. You never know. Okay, what do you need if you want to start arranging? It really does help if you read music. I know one arranger who does not read music, who hears it in her head, as one of you said, and that is a valuable thing in arranging. I sang in Brava for about 5 years before they won, and the lead, Lynn Tatton now, she's a great arranger in her head. She doesn't know how to write it down, but we used to be a pretty good team because she would say, I hear this and I hear this, and then I would go away and write it down for her. And I really liked that because sometimes that's where I struggle, is with the ideas. So ideas are great, but some ability to read and write music will help you realize those things. So some sources or resources for basic music theory and ability to read music are the DCP has a music theory module. That'll get you started naming chords. Studying that. So if any of you are in the director certification program, that's a good place to start. The arranger certification program I just mentioned has the exact same music theory module. It's the first module, and we did that on purpose so that we would at least let you know you've got to understand at least this much before we start getting into all of the other arranging concepts. There are lots of online theory resources as well that would help you with scales, intervals, chord naming, key signatures, those kinds of things. So if you're familiar with that, you've got a pretty good basis for getting going and arranging. The next important thing in barbershop arranging is understanding the style, of course. There's a few good ways to understand the style. Just sing barbershop. You know, whatever part you sing, if you've sung tenor for a long time or baritone for a long time, bass, those are the three really, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what those parts usually do. Basses, you're usually doing bum, 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 bum. You're doing a lot of roots in the chords. You're moving to the name of the chord a lot. And if the lead's already on that note, you're moving to another kind of a note. So you kind of know what the pattern. I know as a tenor, I'm usually a third away from the lead. I'm often following her around. If I dip below her, I don't go very far below her. We end up on a major second interval usually. Have to balance that a certain way. And if you're a baritone, you know too, you could be given almost anything, but you really are the last part we write. So, but singing barbershop a lot gives you a real feel for what barbershop sounds like, what it looks like, how the embellishments work. Listening to barbershop recordings is really important. I have an entire closet full of CDs, and I know nobody buys CDs anymore, but my era of barbershop was the CD era. Well, it was the cassette tape at the beginning, and I wore a few of those out and replaced them with CDs. So I still have all those. I've listened to them. I memorized the ambiance ones, the panache ones. Like there's so many that were favorites. A lot of the men's, Gas House Gang. You know, listen to barbershop. That'll really strengthen your sense of the style when you sit down to arrange. And believe it or not, reading the music category, that's where the style is defined. So, and I mean, the style is defined in the judging category description book, but the music category talks about the chords, the notes, the things that go onto the page. So that would be a good place to start as well. And you can see that online, although I think it's down right now. It's supposed to come back up soon. It's being revised in places, but the music category is still up there, I think. Good to have a music program, something like Finale. There's a bunch of others. I only ever know Finale because it's the one I use, but there's a lot of free ones. use something, and you can put them in the chat if you know what some of the other free ones are, but and paid ones. Finale is an expensive version, but something it used to be, and you'll know if you've been around for any length of time, all of the handwritten arrangements used to be painstakingly handwriting out. If you wanted to do a key change or you decided you'd written it out in the wrong key, I mean, it was very painful. Now it's the click of a button. So it's really useful having a program, and patience and time. Arranging is a little bit of a lonely activity. It is takes time, it takes quiet, it takes concentration, sometimes focus, inspiration, all those things. So just give yourself some time to figure out what you're doing. It will take a little investment of time to do that. A lot of the information in this class is taken from a book that Joni Beskus wrote. And if you happen to have a copy around, I have mine that I was lucky enough to buy in 1992. But it's not in print anymore, but it is a very good, it's a quick read. That's what I like about it. But the Essay Arranger's Guide, which you can get from International, is also an excellent book. It's based on this book, a lot of it. And it's got a lot of exercises in it, which you don't have in this book. So the new Arranger Certification Program, I'm going to say it a million times because this is a great audience for it, is based on that Arranger's Guide. And the Arranger Guide is actually the major study material for the different modules that you would study. And in that program, you would study music theory first. You'd study the music category. You'll study things that we're going to allude to in this, the 11 chords, harmonization, voice leading, embellishments, how to write embellishments. You'll do some music analysis, and you'll study copyright. And there's some other voice leading, I think, voicing of chords, how to voice them. There's a whole bunch of topics. That's just the beginner level. And that's might be all you need if you're just looking to rearrange or you're just interested in arranging. That might be as far as you want to go. If you want to go further, then you can start applying the music theory skills that you learn in the beginner level in the cohort that I talked about earlier, where you meet with 6 or 7 other people and you have 2 certified music arrangers to facilitate. So we've got 2 cohorts going already now, and they're having a really good time, is what I'm hearing. Once you graduate your cohort, you could apply for a one-on-one scholarship from Sweet Adelines International and become a certified music arranger. So you've got a whole host of options. You can start, stop, take as long as you want. Just do the part of the program that's interesting. But that Arranger's Guide is the basis of it all. So there are 11 barbershop chords. How many of you knew that? I'm going to see if I can see some of you. There must be a way for me. Sometimes I get a little strip. Oh, show video panel. Da, 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 da. Do you know, Alex? I'd just like to see a couple.
Should be on your top right corner.
Yeah.
You should see 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots, top right corner of the Zoom.
Yeah. Show video panel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey. That makes me feel like I'm not alone. I can see Annette and Alex and Carmen's blank screen, but that's good. I feel like I'm talking to myself otherwise. It's funny. Okay, so we have 11 barbershop chords. That's just how we define the barbershop. The men, I think they define a couple more, but they're actually in these chords. We just don't call them out. And it's kind of a comfort when you start arranging to think, well, I just have these 11 to deal with. I don't have the infinite number of chords that a jazz musician would have to deal with, for example, or even a classical musician. So here we are, chords. We have a set of chords that we consider very strong for barbershop. And you'll hear us talk about the big 3. The big 3 in barbershop are the major triad, the dominant 7th, and the dominant 9th. You've probably heard that before in some of your travels in barbershop. The major triad sounds like that. 1, 3, 5. The barbershop 7, you're going to know. Hello, 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 right? And you know how much we love that. That's because it moves. It wants to go somewhere. It wants to resolve. And it also rings like crazy. The dominant ninth is the dominant 7. It's got a little bit of a different sound to it, but it's got that barbershop 7 in it. And we tend to use this part of the chord. So we tend to leave the root out of it. You can see it's a 5-note chord. But when you're choosing a song, we want to choose a song that has a lot of those 3 chords in it. So when you're looking at sheet music and you're thinking, is this going to be a good song for arranging in the barbershop style? Look for those major triads. It'll just look like a capital letter. Look for a barbershop 7, dominant 7, like a C7, anything with a 7 beside it, and no qualification, just a plain old capital letter with a 7, that's a dominant 7. And then dominant 9, a capital letter and a 9. Primarily, we want to see those. Now we have all these other chords that we use, and they're called secondary chords. So we call those first 3 the primary chords, and the rest are secondary. And the reason we say that is they don't ring as well, but we do need them. We need them for color. We need them for interest. We need them for flavor. We need them to accommodate the melody, because, you know, the melody doesn't always go, you know. In fact, we almost never hear a melody like that. We hear melodies that go, you know, and some of those notes aren't on the major triad, dominant 7, dominant 9. We have to have other chords that can accommodate them. So when the melody falls on a 6th, we might want to use a major or a minor 6. When the melody falls on the 7th or on the 9th, we might want to use a major 9th or some kind of a 7th chord. Or if it falls on an accidental, a diminished, augmented, those are going to be handy. So we're just going to have a quick look through these. And you're going to see some themes as we move through them. And I'll try not to linger too long. But if you have questions, put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. Alex and Annette are watching, and they will interrupt me. So feel free to stop me when you have a specific question. Okay, the mama chord is a barbershop, release the major triad. Most of these, you can see there's 6 chords constructed on the major triad. So it's an important piece of barbershop. It's got kind of a happy sound. We think of it as 1, 3, 4. And it's only got 3 tones, so we have to double one because we sing a 4-part hobby, right? So when we are talking about chord parts, the 1, when we say 1, that's the root of the chord. 3 is called the 3rd of the chord, and 5 is called the 5th of the chord. 1, 3. So if we want to double something in barbershop, generally we're going to double the root of most chords. There will be some exceptions as we go through them, but doubling the root is usually a pretty safe thing to do. Corinna, especially, yep.
We did have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll wait. It's a dominant 9th question. Want me to wait till you go on to the dominant?
Yeah, 9th? I'll get to the dominant 9th. Yeah, yeah.
Remember.
It's the next one, or it's a few down anyway.
Okay, okay.
We're going to double the root in the major triad. We're going to double the 5th if we can't double the root for some reason, or if it's going to create a problem for the voice part. So sometimes we make little compromises in how we're going to arrange chords. If we can't do the ideal thing, then we look for the next best thing we can do. So only in passing, like if we're moving through on some 8th notes, or maybe we're trying to fix a voice leading issue where we're going to make a singer do something that they can't possibly tune, and we might choose a 5th. We really don't want to double the 3rd. And then there's just some voicing advice here on the other side of the slide. I'll PDF these up and send them to you guys afterwards, or you can watch the recording.
That was a question asked. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, no problem. I've stolen this mostly out of Joni's book because it's my little sort of chord Bible. Yeah, the voicing is really a repeat of some of these things. So that's the major triad. That's a really important chord. You will see the major triad a lot. So you see it, double the root. If you can, double the root. The dominant 7. So again, I said another of the primary chords. It's probably the most important chord we love. It has 4 tones, so we have to include them all. We've got a 1, a 3, a 5, a flat 7. We don't have to double anything, but it is important in barbershop that the bass always be on a strong chord component. And when I say strong chord component, that means the root or the fifth. The root is preferred, and the reason for that is the overtone pattern. The bass on the root of a chord will set up the best overtone structure for the notes above, so that we can hear the fifth and the sixth and the seventh note. It's going to set up an overtone structure that's going to include the notes that'll be above it. So the bass on the root is always the best. If the lead is on the root, though, because sometimes the melody is on that note, but it's calling you for the seventh chord, you can put the bass on the fifth instead. You really don't want to put the bass on the third or the seventh unless you are moving through something or you have something fancy in mind. So I would say that's advanced. And if we're talking about beginning arranging 101, put the bass on the root of the fifth. And then I think sometimes once we learn how to do things well, then we know when we can break the rules, right? But let's start with the rules. The major sixth. Okay, I thought the dominant ninth was next. Let's go to the dominant ninth. There it is.
Yay.
This is the third primary chord.
Okay.
It has 5 tones. 1, 3, 5, flat 7, and a 9, which is really the 2 of the scale. So it's kind of got like that. So we only have 4 singers, so we're going to leave a tone out. We have to leave a tone out. So it's best if we omit the root. That's what we like. So
Nadine's question, thank you.
yeah. And if you leave the root out, then the bass is probably going to be on the fifth, because we really don't like basses on thirds and sevenths. Their overtone patterns conflict with some of the chord parts when we do that. So that's why. So answered the question. Excellent. Yeah, we can't omit any of the other components. We have to have 3, 7, and 9. So there is sometimes a reason why you might leave the fifth out, not the root, but generally beginning arranging, leave the root out and keep the 3, 5s, flat 7, and the 9. Okay, so now the weaker chords. So the big 3 chords, right? If you take anything away, major triad, dominant 7, dominant 9. The major 6 is kind of a pretty chord. It's got that nice crash between the 5 and the 6, and that's how we identify it in the arrangement. It has 4 tones. We have to include them all. You put the bass on the root, and then the fifth, and then the third or the sixth. But you almost never see them arranged with the third or the sixth and the bass. We want the bass on the strong chord components. We identify it by seeing that these 2 voices are arranged together. It's actually got the same chord components as the minor 7.
Now we have a question from Wendy Pachter, and it says, why does the bass part singing the third conflict with the other parts? Is it tuning?
Yeah, it's tuning. It's not that you won't notice a conflict, but it's not reinforcing the other parts the way it can. So I didn't put the overtone pattern in here, but the first overtone that you hear on a bass note is the octave. On any note is the octave. The next one is the fifth, and the next one is octave. What is it? Fifth, and then you start getting. At some point, you wind up with a barbershop 7, anyways. I've forgotten. 1, 5, 1, 5.
Yes.
But if say the chord is C, C, E, G, and you're going to double the C. If you put the bass on the E, her first overtone pattern is an E. That's not a doubled note, for one thing. So you're not reinforcing. If you put the bass on the C, somebody else is singing the C, and her first overtone is a C. So you're reinforcing that and creating that ring. Her second overtone is a G, which is also in the chord. If you put her on the E, she's got an E and then a B. None of those are in the chord. So the overtones on the third aren't in the rest of the chord. So you're not reinforcing and creating that buzz that we like in the barbershop. So that's why. And I have a picture somewhere of the overtone pattern. That would be a good Geek Week class. Just talking about that.
Yes.
Major 7 is another weak chord, so we just did the major 6. Major 7 is, can you hear my piano? I assume you
Yes,
can.
yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so it's got that very dissonant interval, and you probably sung it in pop music more than you have sung it in barbershop. But usually what happens is the basses have like the 1, because we put the bass on the root, and somebody has that 7. Sometimes it's usually the leads. That's why we use this chord. And they so want to turn that into an octave, but they're trying to hang on to that 7. It's very hard to tune. So it's a passing chord. Usually we use it because we have to, because the lead is on that 7. So put the bass on the root and don't voice them side by side. You really don't want anybody trying to sing that. Okay. So these are the weaker chords. If you have a song, if you're choosing a song and you see a lot of capital letter MAJ7 in the guitar chords, major 7, and you're seeing a lot of that, it's probably not going to be a good contest barbershop song. And that's what we're talking about right now. This is the barbershop stuff, not the pop stuff that we sing. You will see it more in pop. Major 9th, similar, has 4 tones. They all have to be included. So it starts with a major 7 and then the 9. It's the same kind of rules as the dominant 9. No, it isn't. Primarily using melody falls. I'm just thinking, always put the root and bass. We keep the root in this one. We abandon the 5th usually. Yeah, that's right. We have to keep the 3 and the 7 and the 9 to have the character of the chord, though. It's pretty. It's pretty. Lots of these things would be for, a color word. If you've got some kind of an ache, like in ballads, especially where we've got very emotional words a lot, they're good. They're beautiful in ballads. The dominant 9th we talked about. Now the minor chords. There's 3 chords built on the minor triad. So the major triad is 1, 3, 5, and then the minor triad we're going to flat the 3 because we're building it on the. Now we're building chords on a minor scale instead of a major scale. So that basic music theory will help you here. We have to double 1. We can double anything in a minor triad, unlike a major triad where we want to double the root or the 5. Minor triad, you can choose. Doubling the root or the 3rd is good in the case of minor, and it depends on what the song is doing. It depends on where the chord is used. So it's
okay.
Strongest with the root and the bass, yeah, but it's similarly strong with the 3rd and the bass. So if you're into key signatures, I'll tell you why. So say C, E flat, G is our minor triad. If I'm in the key of C minor, then that is the tonic chord. That is the home chord for the key. If I'm in the key of E flat, so C minor has 3 flats in it. The key of E flat also has 3 flats in it. That's a relative major of C minor. So when you double the 3rd of C minor, and you're using C minor in the key of E flat as a replacement for the tonic chord, for example, it's almost like it's a surrogate. When you double the 3rd, it becomes a surrogate for the do chord of E flat, the tonic chord of E flat. So that's when you would double the 3rd. But if you really want it to sound like a C minor chord, you're going to double the root. Or you can double the 5th. So that's a nice chord. You can't really make a mistake. You can double anything you want. A lot of these triad chords where we're doubling are strongest when spread to the 10th. So that, when we sing warm-ups and your director goes, lead, tenor, bari, bass. That's a spread to the 10th chord. We like those chords. They ring well. They ring well because the bass and the lead are on an octave, so they're reinforcing each other. The baritone's on the low 5, so it's getting some overtone action as well. And then the tenor is light and not bugging anybody on the 3rd in terms of disrupting the overtone pattern. Minor 6 built on the minor chord, so similar to the major 6, but with the flatted 3. Same tones as the dominant 9 with the root omitted. And the context that helps you name the chord is whether that 5 and 6 are arranged together. So they have the same chord components, but they're used differently. Put the root in the bass. That's always just a good rule of thumb. Minor 7th, put the root in the bass. It's a weak chord again, but we need it for, it's got a minor triad and then that 7 in it. We need it for when the melody moves certain places. We need it. It's a chord that gets used, especially. It gets used a lot, actually. We just don't want it to be the predominant flavor of the chord. Joni says if the barbershop 7 would be more appropriate, use it instead. That does change the flavor, though, doesn't it? And you could only do that if your lead weren't on that 3rd. Like, you can't adjust the melody, obviously, but sometimes you do have options depending on if you're just passing through, you might be able to replace it with something stronger. Now we have 2 symmetrical chords, diminished and augmented. And what symmetrical means is they're built on equal kinds of intervals. So diminished is built on minor thirds. It's a stack of minor thirds. And you can name any chord, any tone as the root. In the diminished, it has 4 tones, so you don't have to double anything, but it doesn't matter which part you put in the bass. So often you can use it, it's used for passing, it's used for effect, and you can put the bass or the voice parts wherever the voice leading is going to be best for the singers. So when I say voice leading, that's getting from one chord to the next. The augmented chord is built on major thirds. It's an ugly little chord, but it has its place too. It's ugly all by itself. Well, maybe it's not ugly. Who can say what ugly is? It's music. It's not a strong chord though. You usually need it because the melody has fallen on this note. So if she's passing through that note, you need to harmonize something with it. You might say, okay, well, I'm going to it's probably not a target note, but if it is, maybe it's a scary word or something. But you can double any tone you like because it's symmetrical. So there, that's 11. Those are the 11 chords we have to deal with in barbershop. Not so bad. Now what do we do? I mean, there's lots of other things to learn about. Like you can tell from what we were just talking about, like a knowledge of key signatures is going to be handy. A knowledge of scales is going to be handy. But let's talk about how to get started. Whoops, oh, look, there's animation on this I didn't know about. So let me just make sure it's all out here. Okay. When you're starting to arrange, as a beginning arranger, the biggest mistake I see and CMAs see and I've talked to arrangers about is that people choose things that are just so difficult, or they choose things that are pop songs, you know, that I did the same thing. I started with pop music because my quartet said, we want to sing this song, Hooked on a Feeling. Will you arrange it for us? Well, it might not be the easiest thing to start with if you're trying to learn barbershop style, because our style, we sing everything together. It's a cappella. We have certain kinds of chords that we expect to find in the song, and we don't have a drum section. You know, so much pop music, the bass has to be the percussionist and the singer, so it makes it a difficult arranging assignment to start with. So I would pick, if you really just want like some exercises, pick a song maybe that you never even intend to sing, but just something that you know is hallmark barbershop. You know, try rearranging Tired of Me, or Oh How I Miss You Tonight, or you know, something that you know has got the kinds of chords you're looking for. Where the melody runs is really important when you're arranging, especially, well, probably for anybody. do, re, mi, fa, so. So is the fifth note of the scale. If you can find a melody that runs from so to so, that's going to be a lot easier to arrange at the beginning of your arranging career than a melody that runs from do to do. And here's what I mean by that. So if you think about the usual keys that we sing in, E flat, A flat, B flat, those keys, right? If say we're in the key of E flat and the melody runs from so to so, where's the melody running from? Where's so in E flat? E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat. So the melody is from, if this is a key, the melody's running up this scale. The bass, if the melody is really low, the bass is probably going to be on an E flat. That's singable for a female bass, right? If the melody is really high, then the bass has got lots of room to move between that low E flat and that high E flat. If I'm in the key of E flat and the melody is from do to do, the lead is also in a happy range. She likes singing from low B flat to high B flat. If it's a do to do song, say it's in the key of E flat, it's going to be too high for the lead, right? We're going to bring it down. We're going to want to bring that down so that the lead can be more in her happy place and say, pitch it in the key of B flat. Now it's a do to do song in the key of B flat. Where does the bass have to go when the lead is on that B flat? She kind of has to go. If we're doubling the root, and that's good barbershop, yeah, she's going to wind up on that low B flat a lot. So do to do songs usually make you make decisions about where should the melody go. Do I have to give the melody to the bass for parts of it because it's too low for the bass to sing where she should in the chord? You know, so do find a melody that runs from so to so for your beginner efforts. It's really important. And then also make sure that the melody falls primarily in the scale that you're looking at the sheet music in. So not a lot of accidentals, not a lot of chromaticism, you know. That's going to just blow your mind trying to harmonize all those notes. You want something that's you want a melody that's pretty much going to stay in the scale. There can be an occasional accidental. Don't let that freak you out. You'll figure out how to deal with it, but you don't want to be spending your first arrangement trying to figure out that. Okay, so choosing a song. Once you've chosen a song, find the sheet music. Often we think we know the melody, but we don't. We may not. Artists do lots of things to melodies. Arrangers do things to melodies sometimes, but we try to stick with the melody that the composer intended. If something was popularized with a change from what you see in the sheet music, and that's what the audience will expect, then it's okay to change a couple of notes in the melody, but finding the sheet music will really tell you what the melody is, especially, well, actually, there's no especially. I can't tell you the number of songs where I thought I knew the melody, and then I looked at the sheet music and went, oh. And then you realize, you know, you've been listening to a harmony singer and thinking that's, you know, in the songs that you know. So, okay, choose a key. So you want to keep your singers in a comfortable range. So it's good to know the ranges of the voice parts. You really probably don't want to take the leads. They say a G. I think G is pretty low for a lead. G. My lead sings a G happily, but I would probably keep the leads not much lower than an A. And probably depends on who you're arranging for, but I don't think I'd go above C very much for leads. Now, I know lots of leads can sing up to an E flat, but if you do that, where's the tenor going to be? Well, maybe if she has to go that high, the tenor might go below her a little bit. Yeah. So we want to keep baritones and leads probably from G below middle C to a C, somewhere around there. And I would be careful around the fringes. You don't want to, they might touch those places, but you don't want to keep them there for a long time. Basses, we used to say E flat was a good low note for a bass, and in a beginning arrangement, that is probably true. I know basses generally can sing lower than that, but you really don't want to keep them down there. You don't want to make a bass sing an E lower than an E flat for a long time. So E flat to a high E flat, you could pop them up to a G occasionally, but they hate it. So, you know, try to keep the singers in happy places. For the tenors, you probably don't want to take them above a high G very much, again, unless you know the group you're arranging for. So you can adjust the rules once you know who you're making arrangements for. And if you have your own quartet to practice on, that's always really fun. And they're very helpful as well in coming up with ideas of how to fix things. And, oh, this doesn't feel like a baritone part. And you'll learn a lot from having guinea pigs to sing your arrangements. But make sure you know what ranges you want to target for the different parts. Then you just write out, then the next part becomes a bit, you know, sort of the mechanics of getting started. Write out the melody and the words in your, you can write it out by hand if you want, but something like a music program would be good. Now take that sheet music that you have and look at the chord names. Now hopefully you picked a song that's got those big 3 chords in it a lot, and write out the chord names. Just insert them into your file as text, just so you have an idea of what the chords are. And then there will be, you'll notice that a lot of the chords, the melody will fit into the chords if you've chosen one that fits on that doesn't have a lot of accidentals, right? You'll see that, oh, okay, that note's in that chord that it says in the sheet music, but there will be some notes that aren't. Now this one, I don't always do it this way. I don't always determine the chords before I start writing. Often what I do is I'll write in the bass line, I'll write in the tenor line, I'll write in the baritone line using the chords on the sheet music, and I'll leave these ones blank until I'm done with that part. And then I'll start sort of, I use my ear a lot for those ones, trying to figure out what goes there. That would probably be my beginner approach. Determining what chords should be used on the remaining notes, I would just say if you can not move the voice parts around a lot, that's helpful to the singer. So if you can maintain where the bari bass and lead were, or where the bari bass and tenor were while the lead moves, and that's, you know, she's out of the chord, that might make a new chord. You may find, oh, that's a major 6, or that's a major 7, and oh, that sounds pretty good, you know, so you could play with those. And then you add an intro and tag if you want, but you don't need those things.
Corinna, we have another question.
Yeah.
Why are the keys of E flat, B flat, and A flat used so much in barbershop?
I think E flat, because when we sing a lot of so to so, that does just put everybody in a nice range. The bass is on a low E flat, yeah. B flat is probably a key we use when we're singing do to do more. Just because you would have the bass up on the B flat, you would probably have to either, or you're switching her to melody and little bridges. But on the 5, she'd be on a C at the lowest. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, but we do see those keys a lot. And I have a feeling it's to do with where the melody sits in the song and where the bass has to go. So often when you're choosing a key, you've got to look at what's going to be good for the lead singer. And then you have to look at where is the bass going to have to go if the lead is singing that melody. Those are the 2 voices I always look at when I'm picking a key. And then everybody else can figure it out. You know, baris and tenors will figure it out. You know, maybe the tenor will be below. But
we have another comment about sheet music of older songs. They don't have the chords identified on their sheet music.
You can Google them. Even like you can find lots of guitar sheets, cheat sheets, all those fake sheets. That's all you need, really.
Okay.
Yeah, even an old song, if they didn't have it on the sheet music, yeah, just Google the song with the word chords behind it. You'll find ukulele charts. It doesn't matter, just anything. Yeah. Sometimes you'll find different harmonizations though. So try to identify a harmonization that looks and sounds familiar to what you know the song as. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talked a lot about these already, so maybe we'll just move through them real quick. Put the bass on the root of the chord. I think I've said that a million times now. If the melody's on the root, then you're going to have to put the bass on the fifth. There are a bunch of other rules here. So dim or og, you can put the bass wherever things are going to work best. The bass should be the lowest note in the chord, and the tenor should be not too far from the lead, generally, and about a tenth from the bass, because we do like things spread to the tenth. Although often tenors these days are more like, I don't know, an octave and a half from the bass. It depends on how spread the chord is, but tenor doesn't double or go under the lead very often. Bari does not go above the tenor or under the bass. So these are things you'd be familiar with if you sang barbershop. So that's part of knowing the style, right? Don't let things get too spread out. So if you find that you're getting, of the Baris are more than an octave away from the basses, then you've got to figure out a way to bring the chord in. So just don't let things get too spread out. That just creates a weakness in the delivery. Think about the singers while you're arranging. Really think about singers while you're arranging. This is a good one for beginners. This don't change chords just for the sake of changing chords. And that is another really early mistake I see all the time too. People are they're just trying out all the chords. And really, when you're singing like an uptune, you don't want to move around a lot, right? It's okay if the baritone stays on the same note for a little while. We like that. Actually, it helps us tune. And so if you think about the singers, don't change the chord unless you have to. That's a good woodshedding rule too. If you're ever singing live harmonizations, you don't move until somebody forces you to move. If you're singing baritone in a woodshed group. When there's a wide jump in the melody, try to use the same chord. And when you're using this is another very common beginner mistake. When you're using 4-tone chords, I still make it. Double check to make sure all 4 tones are there. Because you get engrossed in things, right? So at some point you have to go back and check your work after you've gone through all the nitty-gritty of the problems and make sure all 4 tones are there for the chords. So often we'll double something else or we'll forget. Okay, so I sent you this little song, and this is on your handout, and it's a World War I song. I did look it up, and I listened to a couple of recordings. So that's another thing. When you start to arrange, that's not really in the list, is do listen to recordings of the songs. You'll hear different people's interpretation of it. And I'm just going to play you real quick, just one of these. Let me see. Is this it? Here's a very slow version, but listen for the harmonizations in this. It'll give you an idea of what it would sound like in barbershop voices with no instruments. It's a very slow version. It actually sounds like a barbershop arrangement to me. Yeah. I'm just going to play you that little bit. Here's another version. This one is from earlier. This is probably closer to the original. There's a verse, we're not going to use it. There we go. That gives you a sense of the flavor of it, right? So I usually listen to quite a few. Sometimes I try to find a cappella thing. Sometimes you'll find a guy like this who's like playing you the sheet music. And actually, you can see the chords here too, probably. Oh, here's an example with no chords.
Very lonely, days are very long.
This is the guy who just plays through sheet music for us, right? But you can see this and you could look at that and say, oh, look, they're using an E flat something chord, D flat. Like, you could figure, you could do some chord analysis here, or you could just Google it and find chords. So I often do that. Sometimes I don't do it till I'm stuck, but often if I'm arranging for someone else, a chorus or a quartet has asked me to do an arrangement for them, I definitely listen to the recording that they're familiar with because that's what they're expecting back. So there's lots of options. So here we have, what did we say about the bass? What are these chord names going to tell us about the bass part? Here's the melody. Let's just do that first verse, first few bars. Okay, so chances are that's an E flat chord. That's a major triad, right? What do we double in the major triad?
The root.
The root. And where do we want the bass to be in a major triad? On the root. So we know that the bass, the first bass note is going to be that, right? Now we have a G7. A G7 has how many chord components in it? 4, yeah. So that'd be a G, B natural, D, F, and the lead is already on the G. So what's our second best option for the bass?
The
If we
D.
can't put the bass on the root, we put her on
The D.
the 5th. Yeah, exactly. We put her on the 5th. Now that's going to mean if I'm starting down here at the bottom and I want to get the bass up here, maybe a nice thing to do would be to go, right, for the bass. So I'll keep her on the root on that first 2 E, the 2 long longs, and then I'll drop her to the D. Now we have a minor triad, and see, you know that because you've sung lines like that, right? If you're a bass, or you've heard them, right? That sounds familiar. The other option would be to just start the bass up there, but you're going to be doubling her with somebody. Someone's going to be on that note already, so I kind of like this better. Minor triad, we have a choice of doubling root or third as both strong options, but in this case, I think C minor is actually supposed to be C minor, and then that makes the bass line. Now you can hear, so there, they've written the bass part out for you. Which notes are we going to have to figure out what to do on? Into right? In, I think, is the A flat, but the G and the F, we haven't got any instruction on. So those would be the two that I goof around with, or else I'll just write the A flat chord in for the whole thing, and then later I'll try to make those two sound good. That's how I do it, and everybody does it different. I've been taking music theory, so now I know that a good way to transition between that and that is probably going to be a B flat chord, and that's probably what I'm going to put in there, a B flat 7, and that G is going to be something else. I can't remember what I came up with, but in the end, I used a combination of what I think I know and my ears to fill in that blank. Okay, so we've got a bass part in there now, sort of. Now we want to write the tenor in. Where do you think the tenor is going to start, based on what you know about barbershop tenor?
On the B flat on the 3rd.
Yeah, because she's usually going to be about a third away, right?
And then up to C.
Yeah, so we hear that all the time too in tenor, right?
Yes.
There's a... It's sounding pretty good to me. And I'm betting that somehow that's going to give me a clue to find the chords, right? The tenor's going to follow her around a bit. And then she's going to stay with the lead. And now this is the beautiful part. we have named 3 parts already, and we kind of like them. They're okay for a start, right? Now we just give the baritone all the leftover stuff. So we did, I've got an E flat, a G, and a B flat. What do I need to add? I need to double the root of this chord. I haven't done that yet. That sounds like barbershop, right? And then Barry and the bass are going to share, and then I needed that F. That's a very common baritone, right? And then I needed, who did I not have? I needed the E flat. And she's going to stay in the E flat, and we'll solve that problem later. You'll solve it. So see how your barbershop ears on a simple song will tell you, well, you'll be able to follow those rules on a simple song. So do yourself a favor and pick some of these simple songs, My Wild Irish Rose, I don't know, the Polecats, Down by the Old Mill Stream, like that stuff, really that you probably don't want to sing, but in learning how to arrange, it's just a great way to start and to get your ears. So this is what we just wrote, and this is what I ended up doing here. And I debated that purple one. I left it on the E flat for a while, so it was like a weak E flat chord. I like the B flat 7 on the. I might like that better. I keep going back and forth, and that is the torture of arranging too, is you'll go back and forth on little problems like that. Okay, I know we're out of time. I do want you to think about the ACP if you have a significant interest in this. These are some other things to think about that you will start thinking about once you do a couple of basic arranging things, like what do I do with voice leading? How do I be kind to the singers so they're not having to make horrendous leaps, you know, especially tenors and leads you don't have any choice about. Tenors don't love big leaps. It's just not the skill that gets drilled into us. And baritones can do it, but chords will go out of tune if everybody's leaping, even in the highest level singers. So you want to think about too, how am I going to keep these singers in tune? Then you'll start playing with embellishments and key changes. But for now, arranging 101, just pick a real simple thing. And that is it. That was.
Corinna, thank you so much.
You're
You
welcome.
jammed a lot of knowledge.
Thank
into
you,
1 hour.
Corinna.
Dropping knowledge. Trying. I think, you know what, everybody has a different process for arranging. Your process is going to be different than mine, different than Joey Mitchell's, different than Marge Bailey's. You know, we're all going to have our own way of getting to an answer, and someone else is going to arrange the same thing, come up with something completely different. So it's kind of fun. It's creative. It's a little lonely, but you know, the more people do it, the less lonely it'll be.